A new poll shows Joe Biden's lead in South Carolina is slipping. According to the latest survey by the Post and Courier, the former vice president sits with 25% support. He has a 5-point edge over Senator Bernie Sanders. Tom Steyer isn't too far behind. He polls third with 18% support. Biden has been polling first in South Carolina since he entered the race. However, back in May, he led the field by 31 percentage points. For more, let's bring in Andy Shain. He's the Columbia bureau chief for the Post and Courier. Andy, thanks very much for being with us. I know you reported on how this poll shows Biden's lead has slipped in recent months. Is it clear why?
Essentially, it's interesting that it's more along the lines that Biden's numbers have come down a little bit more than it's been a situation where other folks have caught up to Biden. None of his challengers have gotten over 20% at this point, but Biden's numbers have been continually shrinking since the spring, since he got into the race. So, essentially, it's just been that his numbers are coming down from, I think, really very high levels, very astronomical levels that he was really seeing when he got into the race with the excitement of him getting into the field.
Well, we know African-American voters account for roughly 2/3 of the South Carolina Democratic electorate. Which campaigns have been successful with outreach to these voters?
In particular, of course, Joe Biden is, first of all, has been very successful. That's where most of his support is coming from, and the reason why he has stayed ahead in the race since he's been in it, since last spring, is the African-American support that he's had. But Tom Steyer has very much made inroads here in South Carolina. He's done everything from making sure to hiring a number of African-American staffers for his campaign, advertising an African-American newspaper in the media here. He has held events at, in dominant African-American cities, as well as at HBCUs. And the numbers that we had from our last poll show that he's also closing that gap with Joe Biden among African-American voters.
And we know Steyer's campaign hired the chairman of the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus as a senior advisor. Your publication reported today that the Steyer campaign paid Jerry Govan $43,000 in just over a month. That's more than any other campaign aid in the same time period. How significant is this hire?
It is significant. I mean, again, you're talking about a political representative of a voter base that it represents 2 out of every 3 votes, in a Democratic primary. And so there's been some accusations from the Biden camp, from a major Biden supporter here, that Representative Govan was actually going to support the vice president, the former vice president, before he switched over to Tom Steyer. So there's been a little bit of a back and forth with all of this. But, it's obviously part of the very competitive nature between the two of them, especially after what's happened in Iowa.
Right. And as we're coming into the final stretch here before South Carolina, well, Steyer is one of only 5 candidates polling above 3% in South Carolina. He's the only one without political experience. So how is Steyer connecting with voters on the ground there?
You can't escape Tom Steyer here in South Carolina. I can't tell you how many mailers people are getting, or how many times you see him on television and commercials. My daughter can pretty much recite his ads, because his ads come on before every YouTube video here. He has really blanketed the state with advertising, from your mailbox to your computer to your television. So with that has come the name recognition, obviously the message that he's given, and he has spent a lot of time in the state.
Well, finally, we are still getting in data from the Iowa caucuses earlier this week. Do you know if what we saw play out there with the delayed results is affecting the way voters are approaching the South Carolina primary now?
It'll be interesting to see. I think it's going to be more about the national narrative. Usually, Iowa and New Hampshire play out, Nevada, of course, in its own way, and then South Carolina comes next. But, how is everyone going to treat the Iowa results after what happened with the caucus? I think New Hampshire is going to be kind of seen as Bernie territory, so that's going to be kind of as a pass. Nevada's a caucus. Again, The caucus elections are now, I think, coming into question. So does South Carolina become sort of the first true test for these candidates as we head into Super Tuesday? So I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that's portrayed, and whether we see maybe some of these other candidates, an Elizabeth Warren, say, or a Pete Buttigieg, to come into South Carolina more often to try to build their support after what's happened.
Right. All right, Andy, Shain for us. Andy, thank you.